we are diving back into some Uncanny X-Men goodness with issue 468. Though, one thing that I've noticed, so if you haven't followed along, we've been kind of going through 466, 467, and 468. I had to stop and think about that. This is essentially the ending of Grey's end. And with the covers, I just keep asking myself, I'm like, how much shorter can Bachalo and Claremont make Rachel's dress? I'm just saying. I mean, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's like, really? But still, beautiful piece. Love it. And then you see the death mark that she got last issue. Spoilers, if you have not been following along, pause this, go check out the videos, or read the comics and come back. And you're back. Previously on X-Men, the Shi'ar are a galactic spanning extraterrestrial even, empire. In their theology, the Phoenix represents the end of all that is. Jean Grey of the X-Men became the Phoenix. Even though she died, Jean had a daughter. Me. I'm Rachel Grey. To welcome me to the family, my grandparents decided to gather all the relatives and throw me a party. Without warning, without explanation, without reason, we were attacked. 24 seconds later, my grandmother and I were the only Greys left alive, along with the three of my fellow X-Men, Nightcrawler, Psylocke, and my best friend, Kitty Pryde, who came to save us. And this is essentially the Shi'ar Death Commandos. And I've said this. I like Chris Bachalo's work. I particularly loved it with Lobdell's Generation Next. It just kind of gave it a different angle. It kind of gave it that 90s like Image comic grit. But now that we move forward into the 2000s, this was what, 2000? I don't know if they really put the dates on here anymore. Yeah, hell, I don't remember. It's early 2000s. We'll just go with that. Anyway, I don't know if it's because time constraints or whatever, but to me, this just feels not rushed. I think what kills me more, particularly with this, trying to introduce all these death commandos, is the color palette. Everyone has that gradation of grays, muted flesh tones, whites, blues, and they just kind of merge into one another, and it's hard to tell who's who. It would have been nice if they wanted to use like a muted color palette. I get it, because this is supposed to be serious. These are kind of like the CIA of, what do you call it, of the Shi'ar. But everybody blends in. I'd like stop and really re-look at who was who, because I couldn't differentiate the colors. It was messing with my eyes. And on top of that, and I really started noticing it around this time period, and kind of let me know if you guys feel the same way. But if you go back to, the Claremont era with Cockrum, early Romita Jr., Byrne, etc., so forth, how you'd see that marble way where anatomy, even though they kind of stretched it with muscles, etc., so forth, you could still see like human anatomy, and it looked beautiful. And then it was like, you get into the latter 2000s, and I don't know if they were just trying to be experimental, but everything started feeling blocky to me. Now, don't get me wrong. There was artists that I enjoyed, like Frank Quaglia, like on his new X-Men, etc., so forth. But stuff like this, it feels blocky. It doesn't feel like the X-Men that I knew growing up. You would always look forward to seeing like Lee Field's pencils in X-Force or Adam Kubert on Wolverine, stuff like that. And then this, it just feels like a step down. And that's just me. Let me know. Anyway, we're going to continue. Grey's End, part 3 of 3. Chris Bachalo and Chris Claremont doing the plotting, and then Bachalo doing the pins. Inking crew is Hunter, Mendoza, Olazaba, Parsons, Rapmund, Townsend, and Bay. Colors by Studio F, and lettering by Joe Caramagna. So as we were just talking about, aftermath of Rachel's entire extended family being slaughtered in 24 seconds. Under canon law, you have been ritually branded by the Shi'ar Death Commandos, Rachel Grey. Run or hide as you will, you can never escape your fate. Under civil law, you have been judged by imperial edict. You stand condemned. And this guy's name is, I think, Black Cloak. But see how they just kind of, it's hard to differentiate. Like, is this Sega? Is this Sega? Is this Warshot? Is this Hyperion? Anyway, but I think this guy's name is Black Cloak. Yeah. And Rachel says, not yet. And she uses, of course, the Phoenix Force against him. Now, another thing that, going back to kind of not bashing the art per se, but if you look at Rachel using the Phoenix Force here, it kind of has like this manga look. And don't get me wrong, I love manga. But you look at this, and then I don't remember which issue of Excalibur we did, but it was Alan Davis, where she thought that she died, and she's kind of having that existential crisis in space. And remember how beautiful and crisp the artwork was. I'll try to remember to leave a card in here somewhere so you guys can check it out. But that's the Marvel way that I miss. So even though I love how she just knocks Black Cloak for a loop, it doesn't feel as dynamic as you would hope. And she ends up impaling him. She goes, what does she say? You killed my grandfather, my cousin Becca, my little cousin Julian, all my aunts and uncles, every single relative. That's all you get. You don't get my grandma, too. And then the other thing. So, as I was kind of teasing about the cover, the last two issues of Grey's End, it's another thing for me is how naked can they make Psylocke? I just kept having to laugh at that because she's basically fighting in a shower robe because when the 24 seconds happen, Kurt, literally from Westchester, did one teleport all the way to, I think this is Arkansas or I can't remember where the Greys live. But anyway, you get my drift that back in the day he wasn't so sure of himself and how powerful he's become. But to make a long story short, too late, I know, he grabs Betsy out of the bathroom. And so she's literally been fighting the Shi'ar death squad in her bathroom, which is kind of ridiculous. But anyway, she says, premier warrior class of a race of shapeshifters, able to manifest a whole catalog of superpowers. Figures that makes him unbeatable. So again, this is a super scroll. Now let's go back and see if we can figure this out. Is he, I'm assuming, Flaw? Or could he be Devo? Or could this guy be Black Cloak? Anyway, if you dare make even one move, Star Child, yeah, what I do to your friends here will make what I do to your grandma seem like a child's prank. Now, don't get me wrong. I love this right here. And help me here. I don't know if I'm having one of those like Mandela effects or Memberberry eraser, whatever. Anyway, if I remember correctly, the Greys were back in the Claremont Burn days very down to earth people, very loving. But here, and you kind of notice it when Rachel comes to visit Grandpa and Grandma, how Grandma has this secret hatred for Xavier because of what happened to Jean. Now, this just happened. Listen to this. And I just feel like, even though Chris Claremont was the one that wrote that back in the day with Byrne, listen to how he changes her tone here. And I don't know if it's just because she's embittered because she lost her daughter. But listen to this. Rachel's getting ready to destroy this war scroll. And then she hears this voice come over. She goes, you do justice to your name. Wait, no, I think it's here. Sorry, I thought it was there. She's still talking to Warmonger or whatever his name is. And that's another thing is I just don't care about these guys. Like, there's not enough to make them interesting for me like you would, like, what was her name? Lalandra or her brother. I can't remember her brother's name, or Guardian. It's been so long since I've been in the world of Shi'ar, but y'all get my point. There's not enough depth to this character. Going back to the Greys now. Her face turns angry and she goes, "You." She goes, "Grandma, you monster." And she backhands Rachel. And what happens is this, see, I can't remember that guy's name, Black Cloak? Sure. He's talking about, Rachel says, "These were kids here. These people were innocents." And he says, up close, this is kind of a rough panel. He goes, "They bear your genome." And so Grandma Grey goes off on Rachel. She goes, "Please, Grandma, don't call me that. You are nothing of mine. I deny you. I want my husband back. I want my whole family again. I want my daughter the way she was before I ever heard of Charles Xavier. I curse the day he came into our lives. The X-Men and Phoenix have brought us nothing but heartache and grief. God, forgive me. I pray that my child, my wonderful, beautiful Jean, had never been born, and I wish the same of you." Ouch. I don't remember Mama Gray being that much of a bitch back in the day. Now, I may be misremembering, and that's the word I was looking for. But here it just kind of made me, and then kind of when she was reluctant about Rachel coming around, you would think she'd want to throw her love onto this child like the last piece of her daughter, and she denies her. And I don't know if that's just because Claremont had been out of the game for so long at this point. Now, this is another thing I will say about the 24-second where the entire Grey genome is supposed to be slaughtered. I Googled this, and I may be wrong, but I Googled it, and I said, "Does Chris Claremont hate Jean Grey? Does he hate the Grey family?" And they said no, he actually enjoyed the character. But the way that he basically wiped out almost the entire family, and to just kind of make Jean's mother do this to the last remaining piece of her bloodline, I don't know. I just lost a lot of respect for Grandma Grey. Now, the X-Men show up. Spoilers, because I'm going to spoil one point. Deathcloak hits Grandma Grey, and I guess her name's Elaine. And so, for me, and this is just me personally, if instead of her saying, "I deny you, and I wish you'd never been born, and you can go to hell," if they would have made her more like, okay, the bitterness of Xavier, I can understand. But in the last two issues, if she would have been trying to warm up to Rachel and getting to know her and be like, "You have your mother's eyes. You're so beautiful. You remind me of my daughter," etc., so forth. Really seeing them bond like she did with her grandma. I feel like this scene where Deathcloak kills her, yes, spoiler, Elaine Grey dies. I think it would have hit me harder. But after everything they just did, Cyclops comes and sees one of the last ones because he knows these people. They were gonna be his um, in-laws essentially, so it's part of his family. And so I don't feel nothing for Elaine. But when Scott's trying to hold it together and he's getting ready to just unleash everything that he is, Rachel stops him. And inside, she's like, "Dad, please don't kill these people." And we see he goes on the astral plane with Rachel at first. And he goes, I failed you all. And then he hears, "All right, Scott, Emma, you're in pain. How could I stay away? We're heroes, Emma. We're supposed to prevent this sort of thing. We're also human, my love. Where is it written we always win? It just hurts so much, Emma. I can't. I can help you, Scott, if you let me." So in this moment, I don't feel nothing for Elaine Grey. I feel for Scott because even though I still have my beef with Scotty about walking out on Maddie to get back with Jean during X Factor, you can still see the closeness. And even though they retconned Maddie to be a clone of Jean Grey, that was not the original concept from what I understood when I first met Claremont and he was talking about it. It was Burns resurrecting her in Fantastic Four that kind of threw all that into whack and why he had to just kill Maddie off. But yeah, this book ends tragically, very sadly. 2006, there it is, we found it. She goes, "I'm not my mother. I'm not Phoenix. I'm my own woman. And before I'm done, they'll wish I were Phoenix." And so we see that Rachel's essentially going to kind of go on this revenge tangent coming up in what's called Wandering Star. So I don't know. Jean's Gray. Gray's End. You know, when Claremont comes around, you know that you're going to see Kitty. You know you're going to see Rachel, Psylocke, a lot of the people that he enjoyed from his time, which is cool because they are interesting characters. And the way that she's Jean's daughter, but not from this timeline because of Days of Future Past, it's just interesting to see the way she kind of twists in to the narrative and how much she's grown from back in the day. Because if y'all remember, you know, when she was kind of meandering through the books of New Mutants and the latter half of Uncanny X-Men, she was very reserved because she was afraid of her future coming to fruition. She was afraid of what she would be because she was a hound. And the kind of see her finally starting to try to become a human, and then the Shi'ar rips that away from her in this timeline, is an interesting concept. But still, I found all three of these books very bleak, very sad, and I'm hoping that 469. I think we guys have gone over 469. I forgot. I'll leave a card up here. I don't remember what issue we might have done 472. I don't know. I'll have to look. But anyway, I'm going to get off my tangent. It was a relatively entertaining book. And even though Bachalo's work for me is hit and miss, it's nice to see Claremont back on the book because I dropped this during the Chuck Austin era. That was, yeah, we're not going to get into that. So with that said, guys, it's interesting to read part of X-Men history. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever you like to get your action figures and comics and grab this series. If you've enjoyed this review / rant, really would appreciate taking a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel. And I love talking with you and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure the links down in the description. And also, if you enjoy what I do and you'd like to help support the channel, I have additionally left a PayPal tip jar link down in the description. And if not, either way, I still appreciate you guys stopping by and checking out the video. And with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.